Let's talk about discussing the war that saved my life with your kids. I just wrapped up my Outschool middle school book club for 11 to 13-year-olds about this book. And here are some of the things that we discussed. First, this book, there is a character, heads up, who is an abusive parent, extremely abusive. And the story actually begins with her smacking her daughter who's looking out the window. And the first few chapters show the extreme amount of abuse that her daughter Ada is experiencing. It actually connects to the title. It's why World War II actually saved her life. At some point, Ada is sent away to, she runs away. They are sending children away to protect them from the bombing. They are sending them to London. Her brother hears about this. He's younger. She helps him sneak. They go to the train and they are sent away. So that's kind of just the general idea of how the war saved her life. But the opening is very shocking. So we talked about the opening of the story, how it connects you very quickly emotionally to the character. It's an emotional opening. It's a shocking opening. I asked the kids, how did they feel about it? Did it make them just want to put the book down because they don't want to read about a situation like that? Did they want to now, they were connected with Ada? Did they want to follow her story and see what happens? And we shared, the different experiences that people felt in the opening of that book. And then I use that to kind of broaden the question to why do you think the author included a character, her mom's name is Ma'am, like this? What does it do in the book? And we talked about in order to overcome, you need something to overcome. So we talked about the necessary part of the story to be able to tell Ada's story and how we started in this low spot. We also talked about how it compares to when Ada returns back to Ma'am and she's become a new person and how the situation is so different and she sees it differently. She has been empowered in her time away. And so she's able to make changes. So the opening of the book compared to when we see Ada and Ma'am again later in the book really helps to highlight the differences, which is why it was important to start with how things were at the beginning. All right. Then we talked about my favorite character, Miss Smith, Susan Smith, who takes in the children in London. And I said to the kids, Miss Smith introduces herself and says to the kids, Jamie and Ada, I am not a nice person. And we see her throughout the book. We know she's a nice person. So I asked them, why do you think she said this? And they had lots of different opinions. And I told them there's no one right reason here. Maybe she wanted the kids to just leave. I mean, she makes it clear she didn't want to take in the children. She's not in a great headspace either. She's still grieving the loss of a friend. So we talked about maybe she was hoping they would then demand to leave or they wouldn't want to be there. Maybe she was just aware of her own grief at that time and was afraid of how she might treat the kids. So we discussed a lot about that and then moved into the fact that she actually was a nice person. And in fact, their time with her, she empowered them. So we defined empowered to make more confident, to make stronger, and discussed what are specific things Miss Smith did during their time that really empowered Ada specifically to become the person we see at the end of the book. And we talked about things like being honest to her, defending Jamie at school and his right to use his left hand, giving her freedom, giving her responsibility, allowing her to take care of Butter, teaching her to read and write. We talked about how she did that in such a sneaky, fun way to get Ada. So then I had them jump to the end where Miss Smith, and by the way, this is a little giveaway at the end, Miss Smith turns to Ada and Jamie and says, the two of you have saved my life. Now, there is a literal reason she says that there at the end of the book, and you'll see when you get there. But there are also metaphoric reasons. So I asked the kids, how do you think they saved her life? What are some of the reasons? And there's lots of them. So we talked about the physical saving that happened there at the end, but we also talked about the emotional and mental saving by giving her purpose to take care of them, pulling her out of her own grief, helping her form connections and bond again. We saw her get involved in her community again because of them. So we talked all about that. Then we backed up and talked more about other things that empowered Ada, not just Miss Smith, but how Mr. Grimes, some of his actions, how her friendship with Maggie, the crutches, what other things really helped empower her and helped her grow up and mature during this time there. And then we talked about the theme. I'll give you one more thing. We talked about the theme of freedom. What did freedom mean to Ada? What did it mean in this book? And what does it mean to them? What do they think freedom is? And why is it important? So it was a really fun discussion. Again, the abusive parent can be really difficult for kids to read about. So make sure you kind of know your own child if you want to read this one. This was one of my son's books that he loved in middle school. It is a Newbery honor. And it offers, we talked about this as well, a unique perspective on World War II. Because so many times we read a story of the kids who are being sent away to keep them safe, and it's sad. They miss their families. But in this situation, Ada's actually going to a better situation, hence the title, The War That Saved My Life. And most of the kids were really excited to find that there was a sequel. And I've heard it's excellent. I haven't read it, but there is a sequel to the book as we watch Ada continue her life now with Miss Susan. All right. I hope that helps. You discuss this book with your kids. As always, there are links below if you want to check out my Outschool classes. I have book clubs for 8 to 10-year-olds that meet monthly, as well as middle school that meet monthly. And if your child is into graphic novels, I also have a weekly graphic novel class where we read and discuss a different graphic novel each week. All right. Thanks so much for tuning in.